Greetings, everyone. My name is Joseph Mass, and I am here with Elder Makinde Gbolahan. Tell us a little bit about your background, Elder Gbolahan.
Well, I'm the founder of Universal Childhood Enlightenment Council and the director. It's an educational awareness advocacy organization where we try to make sure that our children and the society that we live in get adequate information concerning the development of social and political and economic equality in the society that we live in.
Okay. Now, we have a specific task on this evening. I'm going to show you on our screen, on your screen right now is, I think this gentleman's name is Jay Fayza, Fayza. And in just a moment, we are going to make some comments. We're going to let some of his video play. He did this video. It's titled Debunking White Privilege, the Economic Reality. And wow, Elder Gbolahan and I, we were listening to this video and felt that this young man was extremely off base. I've done some video on white privilege and obviously the proof that it exists. Ben Shapiro, I commentated on some Ben Shapiro video and some others, but we saw this video and felt compelled that we had to address some of the error that is that we see here. Now, Elder Gbolahan,
I wouldn't say some, all.
But yeah. We're gonna now the way we're gonna do this. Only this video he did is like 5 minutes and some seconds. We only gonna utilize the first 2 minutes because I mean when you listen to the first 2 minutes and see the fact that this gentleman is extremely off base, then it's not even a point to go further. So let's do this at this time. We're gonna listen to one of the first points that he made in his video. We're going to stop it, discuss, and then point by point up to the 2 minute mark, we're going to address what this gentleman had to say about debunking white privilege. Let's listen.
White privilege is a concept of the economic, social, and political institutions in liberal democracies like America benefits whites while disadvantaging racial minorities. Somehow. The evidence, though, doesn't back up the claim, no matter how often it's cried out by liberals.
Okay, now, the first thing that he said was, you know, he gives some description of what white privilege represent, and then he makes a statement that no matter how, you know, and this is not a party issue, at least not for me. I mean, I consider myself a conservative, but he talks about the liberals, and they generally consider to be Democrats. But the point is that he says that there is no evidence, or evidence does not support this claim of white privilege existing. Elder Gbolahan, in the interest of time, we want to keep this, but what are your thoughts about that first point?
The comment that he was made, he said economic, social, and political. So if the economics hadn't benefit, we are saying that the economic system, institutions that's in this society have historically benefit of the dominant class in this society. So in other words, I guess he's saying that the institution of slavery didn't benefit white folks. I guess he's saying that the housing, governmental housing, redlining, bank loans, educational system, none of these systems benefit the dominant group in this society, but still benefit dominantly from the economic as well as the political and the social and monopoly that's going on in the society today are controlled by that dominant group. So I don't see how he can just pick out one aspect and say that just because somebody make an income,
well, we're going to listen to him.
Whole premise.
You're sharing his next point. We're going to go to that in just a moment. But on this notion that there is no evidence that white privilege exists, we talked about, well, we can mention redlining and how that still affects minorities to this, particularly African Americans, to this very day, and how we are blocked out away from certain loans that would enable us to experience upward mobility, that would enable us to secure properties that could develop generational wealth, and all of these things is still to this day. You talked about
gentrification is going sweeping the nation right now. Gentrification. We talking about banks right now. I think it's Bank. It is Bank of America.
Right.
It's Bank of America. Just solving major lawsuits.
We'll put a link below.
Millions of dollars.
Right.
Because of redlining,
right.
African Americans,
denying minorities and African Americans loans.
Yeah, and so not only they are guilty, other institutions were guilty. Now we just had Wells Fargo, who actually did all kinds of things when it comes to denying loans to the African American community. Won't even open branches in certain African American communities. Send people into the bank with the same qualification, and sometimes the blacks even rank more income and education, and yet still deny the loan. But now if they want a loan for a boat, for a luxury car, they can get those kind of loans.
But not homes and stuff that would build generational wealth.
No.
And so again, I mean, this gentleman starts out, he comes out of the gate in error. That there is no evidence of white privilege. It's because he didn't look for any. I mean, it's evidence everywhere that these benefits.
I don't think his mind can understand what we're talking about, because undoubtedly the evidence is so great on the issue of redlining communities, on the issue of education,
school to prison pipeline, a situation that just happened 4 years ago here in Mobile, Alabama. In a court of law, it was proven by the Southern Poverty Law Center mm-hmm. that African American students were being punished and suffered certain punitive practices that their white counterparts guilty of the exact same infraction were getting lighter sentences. We were getting expelled when they were getting suspended. We were getting suspended when they were getting a warning, and so that was proven in a court of law. Now that's the.
Well, even though if I go to court right now, because of the vilified black males, I am guilty until proven innocent.
Right.
But a white male don't have that burden on him when he go in. So it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be white in this society, and for him to deny that, it's just foolishness.
Well, let's look at some of his argument. He comes out of the gate already in error, and so now we're gonna actually go and listen to his next point.
I'm Jay Fayza from The Rebel, and let me explain to you why white privilege is bullshit. Here's a fact. Whites as a racial group do not have the highest household income in America. Asians do. According to the Institute on Assets and Social Policy, Asian American median household income is $57,000 per year. White Americans, on the other hand, have a household median income of $48,000 per year.
Household medium income. Now, he's basically building his argument that white privilege doesn't exist merely or simply because Asians have a medium income, household income that's higher than our white community, and on that understanding, of course, his argument on that premise alone, he says that the idea of white privilege is debunked, because it would be, he's going to say this as we play a little bit further, he said it'd be more accurate to say Asian privilege, but not white privilege. Why is this fallacious?
It's fallacious because numerically, if you look at the number of white households and compare that to the Asian household, you can't come up with the equation that reflect adequately what he is trying to express here.
Right.
But also on the concept of here, when you look at the wealth of the Europeans, whites as they call, in America, the Asians can't even match that kind of wealth, economic control, or political power. So to base everything on just who bring home the biggest paycheck, and that would negate
Right.
All other aspects that we're talking about, the social inequality, the education, the prison. So now he's forgetting all that, and now he's basing everything on just because someone bring a greater income home, even though they don't have greater wealth.
And to flesh this out even more, again, when you spread out, I think the white community make up 77% of the total American population. Asians 5.6 or something to that effect. And of course, in that vast percentage, 77%, you have a wide range of from extremely poor all the way to extremely wealthy. Because also we talked about the power elite and that percentage of the American population that actually control the majority of society. They control the banking institutions here. That controls the media. That controls education, that has great control politically, that sits in the CEO slots of these major Fortune 500 companies. All of them are predominantly, if not exclusively, white people.
It's a very few percent that is minorities, but they're still not minority owned. They're
Right.
all owned.
Right.
But the concept again is fallacious. When you look at Asians who come here, they come here basically for education.
Right.
They come out of their own culture, they're trained, and mostly they are not poor people coming over here. They come from well-to-do families, middle-income families, and they're focusing here coming on education. So you don't have a group of people who run the gamut
Right.
of all those income levels, and you're going to try to make this comparison, and
Right.
then you're going to negate all the other discrimination, the Jim Crowism, the lynching, and everything, the experience that we had in America, and say that that's going to be based on some Asian's income.
And
That's
in
ridiculous.
fairness, there's been an Asian population since the 1600s, going way back. But
Well, I
again,
agree.
they've always been a very small. I think as recently as the 60s, they made up only about 0.5%, 0.5%, not even 1% of the American population. So again, when we look at these numbers, and then as you say, many of them come into our country with a degree of wealth already, a certain degree of knowledge, and many come with a mission and a plan for education and other
And well-educated
aspects
schools that they come from in their own homeland
from their own
when
homeland.
they come in. So they are very prepared.
Right. And
But our system, we got failing schools
Right.
in our communities.
We're trying to bring young people up, like even in Mobile right now, we got over 9 failing schools in every one of them. In fact, the black community in Mobile are all crippled by failing schools.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so,
But now they say that when we get to that there's no privilege, but when it's been privileged for all these 13 years that we've been in school, they don't have to deal with the same failing schools or teachers who don't believe that we have the ability to learn.
and these marginal instructors get sent to these failing schools, and it just perpetuates the problem. And they get, in terms of overall budget, less is allocated.
They get less allocated for their education. They get the teachers who have a biased attitude with their ability to be able to learn. If you don't
Right.
believe a child has the ability to learn, then you ain't going to have no expectations of the child. You ain't going to challenge the child. And then within the system itself is segregation.
Right.
Because then you relegate them to special education because you feel threatened because he's a male especially. And if he say anything or do anything you interpret it as threatened, he's gone.
Mhm.
He's gone.
Okay.
And we were just talking about a white kid can have the same attitude and he doesn't get that type of punitive damage
Right.
that happened to the black child.
And-
But then he's marginalized into a classroom where they don't even challenge him to learn anymore.
Right.
They just maintaining him there to get whatever funds that come with having the students in the school.
Wow. Let's listen. I think we're getting close to finishing up. Again, we just want to go to the 2-minute mark. Let's listen to his next point. His next point here.
If we break this down by ethnicity, you really start to see the wealth gaps. Japanese American households make $70,000 a year, while French American households make $63,000 a year. Iranian American households make $66,000 a year, while Dutch American households make $59,000 a year. In fact, the three ethnic groups that, on average, make the most household income in America by descending order are Indian Americans, Filipino Americans, and Taiwanese Americans. How can the notion of white privilege exist when non-white racial groups make more money than whites in purely economic terms? Eight.
Okay. Now let's deal with that. I think we already have somewhat hit that, but just to punctuate, he talks about these three performing non-white groups outperforming in terms of household income white Americans, and using that as an argument that white privilege doesn't exist. But again, when you talk about the power elite in America, the barons, those who run the banking industry, sit at these key positions in the banking industry, media, politics, education, the whole gamut, the economic, the corporate industry, the Fortune 500 leaders in our community, all of these are predominantly white people. These are the power elite.
They are privileged.
Yeah, and so the power elite making
control.
They control, and so in that control there is this benefit of privilege because it's granted in the legislation. Again, we go back to redlining and all these other different things that affect blacks and minorities, but particularly blacks. All of these other aspects that affect the school to prison pipeline we mentioned, redlining, the industrial prison complex where individuals have monetized being incarcerated and billions are being made, and we get sentencing, at a disproportionate, than our Caucasian counterparts. And so all of these things that affect us and continue, not just in the 60s and 50s, but continue to this very day, affect us, and they are these policies, this legislation, these practices are coming out of that power elite, and the power elite in America still is white.
But not
with
only
privilege.
That, now to base his,
no matter what the Asians are making in their household, these
the assertion on Asians' wealth, Asians' income, not even wealth, but just the income, and they're going to negate all of the other dynamics that institutional racism is involved in the society. We're talking about
that you can clearly see and measure.
We're talking about mortgages. We're talking about loans. We're talking about car. We're talking about I think the rate interest that's charged on cars is different for African Americans than it is for whites. Now, you can even break that down to black women. When they go by themselves without a male, they pay a higher rate. So this guy have not did his research on the prevalence of the oppression and the disparity and the privilege that's in the society that we live in
still
today.
Exists. Well, he makes this other point, and I think this is the final one that we want to deal with, is when he compares blacks that come from out of the country, like from Nigeria, and talk about their wealth. Let's see if this is it.
Asian privilege makes more sense as a concept than white privilege, but you're never going to hear liberals complain about Asian privilege. That'd be racist. Liberals do complain about the disparity between the average black household versus white household. They claim that because blacks on average make less household income and less money than whites in general, that's a sign that our economic systems have fallen and we're living in a racist society. Ooh, boogeyman, the economic system is against you. Despite their claim, though, certain black ethnicities like Nigerians and Ghanaians are well off. Nigerian household income is $61,000 per year. Ghanaian household income is $57,000 per year. How can liberals argue that we live in a society that economically disenfranchises blacks when Nigerian Americans have a higher household income than Dutch Americans and French Americans, and Ghanaian Americans have a higher household income than Albanian Americans, for instance?
Okay. And I think that's our final point with this video. I think we should be right at about the 2-minute mark. But what is your problem with this? He makes this argument that how can white privilege possibly exist because and how can it create some sort of disparaging state or condition for black folks when there are blacks coming from other nations into our country and doing quite well?
I think you got some blacks in America, in spite of the oppression and the inequality, still doing quite well. Mm-hmm. And you got Nigerians, I like to applaud them, but they come from society where they come from well-educated schools. They don't have failing schools. They come from over here. They come from a level of wealth, and they're coming over here to.
Well, it's many of them. Let's say, because I'm sure they hurting. Some of them are hurting too.
I'm not saying that some of them is not hurting, but he's doing this comparison
right
on the household income. So what I'm saying is that, but to relegate the whole concept that Nigerians are doing well in spite of racism, or blacks, or Oprah Winfrey doing well in spite of racism. So that don't negate the
reality that these
of
things,
white privilege.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that Bill Cosby, before he got in trouble, wanted to buy CNN, but
NBC.
he wasn't NBC. He wasn't able to buy that because he was black.
Right.
They
feel like that attack was because it's white individuals that have done far worse in terms of, and I'm not minimizing what he's guilty of or what.
But that time he wasn't guilty of anything when he was trying to buy the media company.
Right.
But we don't control mass media. Matter of fact, the little media we did control in this company, with the policies that was made with white privilege and white power to usurp and monopolize. And monopolize, they were able to monopolize and undercut the black media that the blacks did control in this country.
Right.
And so I don't see where this young man did any research on any historical factors or either present factors when it comes to the issue of white privilege and institutional racism.
Right. And again, I think for me, it goes back to the understanding of the power elite and those who actually control and pull the strings of society and are in these power positions to do just that. And the majority of those positions are still to this day Caucasians. They're not Asians, even though Asians may make more, per in family income, but they still, how many Asians actually control the media in this country or control I have a powerful influence over politics. I have sit in as CEOs in many of the banking institutions or in this country or in some of the Fortune 500 companies that...
Well, even if you had the money, Joseph, if I had the power, I can create legislation to take your money.
Take your money, exactly.
I mean, well, you're probably...
So his theory does not do anything to address the power elite concept.
Right.
And
it doesn't address any of the concept of the inequality in all the institutions that impact our daily lives.
Right.
The police departments.
Right.
It don't address any of those kind of things.
And on this,
they don't even deal with the genocidal practice that terrorize us, cause us to lose stability, economic stability.
Right.
The Black Wall Street and the other aspects when our whole economic
Rosewood
was destroyed.
Right.
By these forces that had the power to destroy all of our advancements.
Greenville, Rosewood, all of these are instances where entire communities was wiped out.
The Nigerians and the
they don't have that background.
They didn't have that experience to deal with.
Exactly. They don't come here with the same obstacles, even though they may have black skin. They don't come here with the same psychological effects that being brought up in this culture. They did this study. I think it was associated with the case Brown versus the Board of Education. Mm-hmm. I think it was those lawyers that did the little baby experiment, where they had the black baby and the white baby and told black kids which one is the good baby and which one is the bad, and it showed how deeply rooted this whole separate but equal thing was a farce. These kids weren't being educated to some separate but equal access. It was showing how still embedded, even in these little kids from that young age, how they already viewed themselves as bad. They already, it was embedded in them as being not as valuable as their white counterparts. And so Nigerians
They don't have that
don't have a
they
experience.
didn't have that experience where calling one black that there was a fight when you call a man
Now I'm
black.
not saying Nigerians don't have their issues in their own
Well, I'm not
culture
saying,
and what have
but
you.
I'm saying, but the bleaching of skin that black folks once did in this country to look more light. As a matter of fact, there was a saying: say, if you're light, you're all right. If you're brown, stick around. But if you're black, you get back.
Get back, right?
So we've been having this stereotype where they got images of us with big lips and red lips and watermelons, and so this attack on our image,
Right.
the psychology of privilege. They didn't have to experience any of this.
They didn't come with the same baggage.
They didn't come-
And then many of them, like you pointed out with the Asians, they come here because most of the those that I've seen, they have been even on my job working with those who come from African countries. They generally come as students, and so they come already with a mindset of education.
We got a purpose.
Right.
They got a purpose. They got a behavior pattern and characteristics of being studious, being
Right.
productive. They got support systems in place.
Right.
So the handicap at an early age, when you teach one that one is inferior, and you build white supremacy on somebody being inferior, and if I accept that, then I would perform in a marginal way if I accept that I'm inferior. So if I look at the history books in this country, it doesn't teach the history of my people and give them a self-worth.
Right.
Because I used to be searching when I was a young man coming up, looking for images that I could emulate to help build or get some identity for myself. And so I hate to say this, but I used to go into movies and identify with the character so much, looking for someone that I can identify with image of being like.
Talked about seeing Shaft and
Yeah,
you wanted to
Shaft
identify
and
with
stuff,
Shaft
it'd be like that.
because you didn't have
They
any.
didn't have all these negative images. So when people see African American males, when they buy into these stereotypical ideas and concepts, then they begin to reinforce the same thing that other people say about them. They start calling each other derogatory names.
Right.
So that's deep embedded.
Right.
Deep embedded.
Right. It's some psychological deep issues that go on there, and we might do another video, not this evening, but in the future we'll do another video and talk about the psychological effects and how, at that critical age of 6, how you're imprinted and how that carries how you learn by 6 is how you learn the rest of your life and so forth. And if you're crippled at that point,
But
and have crippling images,
you have to try to catch up all the way and
exactly.
you're behind. But I use the example sometimes that a beautiful young lady, I'm gonna say a girl who didn't look necessarily that beautiful when she was young, and people used to pick at her and call her all kind of names. But as she got 17 and 18, she turned into a much more beautiful girl. And I'm just using this illustration, and I saw her and I said, you are one beautiful lady.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me and said, who? Somebody
Mm-hmm.
behind me or something? I just
Right.
said it that way.
Right.
But they don't believe you.
Because all their life
Because
they've
all
heard
their
things
life,
one
they've been
way.
told something negative
Right.
about how their appearance is.
And even when that changes, it's a struggle to try to catch up with that
It's
new
to
identity.
break a pattern. Now, if you look at the industry of beauty products in this country, you see that blacks buy more of these products. And even though we are numerically not as large, we buy most of this industry because we have still struggling with identity
Right.
problems.
Right. Well, let's close. Final thoughts on final
But I
conclusion on
think
this
that he needs
individual.
to do some research about the institutions and how they impact society that we live in today.
Yes, and I would echo the same. He's misguided, and I think we read in one of the comments how basically his entire argument is a straw man argument. He's really not even addressing the true issue that needs to be addressed. He's built up this whole, he gives some facts and some things, but they have nothing to exactly
out of
context.
And when he first started, he said economic, political, and social.
Right.
But he got away from all of those.
That has all, that covers the whole gamut of society,
but
but
he
yet.
just stayed on economics.
So I think we are in agreement that Mr. Jay
Need to go back to
Fayza,
school.
he need to do a little bit more research. God bless y'all, and we're gonna come again with some more information. Be blessed.